questions that were asked.
Hello, we are the New England Watershed Consulting Firm hired by the town of Norwalk to help reduce the town's nitrogen runoff. We will talk about Long Island Sound, why it is important to Connecticut both ecologically and economically, and why it is important to reduce hypoxia in it. We will also talk about the two largest contributors to nitrogen pollution in Norwalk and ways to reduce these. Okay, now Claire Kelly is going to tell us a little bit about why Long Island Sound is important.
Long Island Sound is an estuary with over 600 miles of coastline on the eastern coast of the United States. An estuary is a body of water formed when freshwater rivers meet with the saltwater ocean. Estuaries are very important to marine life as the sheltered waters provide homes to plants and animals which thrive best in both salt and fresh waters. These include ospreys, horseshoe crabs, many species of fish, mangroves, and seagrasses. Rare or endangered species such as the short-nosed sturgeon can only survive in the specific ecosystem of the Long Island Sound and its perfect balance of terrain. The Sound's 1,320 square mile area is home to hundreds of species of fish and birds alone. Fish and shellfish that are largely consumed in the U.S., such as salmon, herring, and oysters, spend at least part of their life cycles in estuaries. Estuaries are especially favorable, because they're so sheltered, for breeding grounds and creatures in early stages of development. The calmer mixing waters of estuaries are additionally vital for filtering pollutants and sediments out of the water via use of the marshes and bogs around it. Tidal marshes formed around the Sound are indispensable, being some of the most biologically productive systems in the world. Plants produced in these areas decompose over time, releasing their minerals into the water, from where they are flushed into the sea, helping with the growth of other marine life. Long Island Sound is also essential for economic reasons. Long Island Sound fishing is historically rich, both recreational and commercial. More than 8 million people live around the Sound watershed. The events that occur on it, including boating, fishing, and swimming, are essential to the regional economy, contributing over $5 billion per year, with hundreds of commercial and industrial businesses that depend on the Sound's waters. It is also very important to the general public, as it is a beautiful place to sail, fish, birdwatch, or just generally enjoy the ocean. These points and its ecologic benefits make Long Island Sound Connecticut's largest and most important natural resource. Now Tyler will tell us about hypoxia and why it's important to keep it away from the Sound.
The direct effect of hypoxia is dead fish, otherwise known as a fish kill, which not only deplete valuable fish stock in the damaged ecosystem, but are unpleasant for local residents and harm local tourism. Oxygenated water is necessary for aquatic animals to breathe. Mobile animals, such as adult fish, can often survive hypoxia and will need to oxygenate the water. When they cannot, when young fish may spend time in a habitat becoming a hypoxic area, the result is a fish kill. Non-mobile animals, such as clams, cannot move into healthier waters and are being killed by hypoxic episodes. This causes a severe reduction or in extreme cases of complete loss of animal life in hypoxic zones. Because hypoxia often occurs in estuaries and near shore areas like Long Island Sound, where the water is poorly mixed, nursery habitat for fish and shellfish is often affected. Without nursery grounds, young fish cannot find food or habitat they need to reach adulthood. This causes years of weak recruitment to adult population, resulting in overall reduction or destabilization of important stocks. Fishing birds and males, such as herons or otters, cannot live where there are no fish. Hypoxic areas may also be more susceptible to overfishing, pest outbreaks, storm damages, or other stresses. Chemical reactions between hypoxic water and bottom sediment can release further pollutants stored in the sediment, further fueling the hypoxic condition or otherwise polluting ecosystem. Now Rebecca is going to talk about the Norwalk River watershed.
The Norwalk River watershed consists of 6 municipalities in Connecticut: New Canaan, Norwalk, Reading, Ridgefield, Weston, and Wilton. It holds 40,000 acres and is populated by about 66,000 people. It begins in Ridgefield, which is in the north, and it flows for 20 miles before entering Long Island Sound, which is here, and at the Norwalk Harbor through the Norwalk River. Before identifying the sources of pollution in Norwalk specifically, let's look at some interesting things the Long Island Sound study has discovered. There's obviously a strong correlation between increased pollutant loads and increased human activity. The large population in the Norwalk River watershed obviously explains this. Also, urban land cover exports the highest load of pollutants. The Long Island Sound study has also found out that the urban land cover delivery of nitrogen per unit area is at least 3 times as high, sometimes even 5 times as high as what forested lands deliver. From this information, we can gather Norwalk to be a very probable source of pollution to the Long Island Sound. Norwalk is a highly developed city with a majority of urban land cover, a relatively large population, and an important harbor which hosts many boats and other aquatic vehicles and is a viable recreational and commercial resource. Its main sources of nitrogen and stormwater runoff include cars and other sources of land transportation, boating, industrial factories, and human activities in general. And now Alex will speak about transportation and nitrogen pollution.
Thank you, Rebecca. As Rebecca mentioned earlier, two of the largest contributors to nitrogen pollution in Norwalk are cars and boats. As they burn their fuel, they release nitrogen dioxide into the air. When it rains, this nitrogen dioxide reacts with the rainwater to form nitric acid, which falls with the rain. This then flows into Long Island Sound, increasing the nitrogen content of the water, thereby increasing the amount of hypoxia. Okay, so how do we fix this problem? The easiest way to fix this is to reduce the amount of nitrogen dioxide coming out of cars in the first place. The most efficient way to do this is to tax cars and boats that burn more fuel, because the more fuel a vehicle burns, the more nitrogen dioxide is released. Therefore, we need a tax that costs people more money based on how fuel efficient their vehicle is. Okay, so there are two questions you're probably asking yourself right now. How is the tax implemented, and how much should it be? I'll answer that first question first. Ideally, we would tax people each and every time they drove or boated in Norwalk. Obviously, we can't do this. It would be a logistical nightmare. We also can't tax fuel, which would effectively tax the use of a vehicle, because if we did, people would just go to the next town over to buy it, and local businesses would suffer. The best way to implement this tax is to tax the residents of Norwalk, because most, 80%, of the driving in Norwalk will be done by residents. There is already a tax in place in Norwalk for owning a vehicle for the reparation of roads. We could simply add this tax onto that. Okay, now we're going to look at that second question. How much should this tax be? This is a slightly trickier question. We need a tax that costs a lot if your car or boat gets, say, 3 miles per gallon, but that costs little or nothing if your car or boat gets over, say, 30 miles per gallon. The trick here is to make it a high enough tax to encourage people to buy more fuel-efficient cars, but not so high that people who need a bigger, less fuel-efficient car or boat can't afford it. We currently have experts in both environmental science and economics looking into this question to find the right tax. In conclusion, as you can see, it is obvious that we need to levy a fuel efficiency tax on the residents of Norwalk on both cars and boats. Thank you. Okay, now Richard is going to talk about nitrogen pollution from residential land use.
The other one of Norwalk's largest nitrogen pollution sources comes from residential land use, since over 30% is made up of urban land cover. The two main residential nitrogen pollution sources are impervious surfaces consisting of homes, streets, driveways, etc., and people fertilizing their lawns. Any plan to reduce the nitrogen pollution needs to deal with both existing and future residential land development. The major pollution sources stated are the impervious structures found throughout Norwalk, such as homes, streets, sidewalks, driveways, etc. They block the absorption of water into the ground, forcing it to run elsewhere along with the nitrogen it is carrying. The other source is fertilizer, which washes into the waterways from manicured lawns, whereby traveling to the Long Island Sound. To combat the pollution, there are several measures that should be taken. First, to reduce the fertilizer pollution, a public awareness program would be ideal. In 2006, a survey stated that 77% of the people don't think they pollute the Sound's waters through their actions. If more knew the effects they were having, more would avoid over-fertilizing, reduce their fertilizer use, or switch to organic methods altogether. Also, existing homeowners should be encouraged to build rain gardens to catch water runoff from impervious surfaces, and should be made aware to alternatives to impervious surfaces such as pavers for when a driveway needs to be replaced. The second step would be to create new zoning regulations for future land development and redevelopment. Rules should be created limiting the number of impervious surfaces allowed, and could require that future subdivisions be built with a conservative design that would be created by Norwalk's zoning board. This conservative design should include smaller lot sizes without increasing the number of lots on the parcel of land, which would save land for open space, reduce frontage and setback size on lots, which would decrease the length that the street and the driveway need to be to accommodate each of the lots. The use of pervious driveway designs and materials or shared driveways, the use of rain gardens to capture water runoff from reverse driveways and other impervious surfaces, requiring alternative cul-de-sacs, such as a loop delay, which is pictured here, which eliminates the necessary pavement by turning what would be a two-way street into a one-way street with a central landscape section to catch water runoff. The third step to reduce the nitrogen pollution would be a program to buy land to create open space. This would reduce impervious cover, thereby reducing water runoff. And open space along the water resources would act as buffer zones to absorb the nitrogen-carrying water that would otherwise end up in the water source.
We hope that this presentation has helped you to understand how important the natural resource Long Island Sound is, and how hypoxia could cause instability in the ecosystem. We also hope that this has helped you to understand what part Norwalk plays in nitrogen pollution, and how we can reduce this pollution. mainly through increasing the cost of vehicles that pollute more and reducing the nitrogen impact of residential land use. Thank you for your time. Does the board have any questions?
Okay.